Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into the world of habits today, and it's going to be fascinating.
I think so too.
We're pulling from Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit.
Ah, good choice.
I mean, we all have them, right? Habits, I mean. But how many of us really understand how they work?
That's the key, isn't it? Understanding them gives us power.
Exactly. Get ready for some seriously surprising stuff. Like, did you know a trip to Cairo helped one woman quit smoking, run a marathon, and buy a house?
More than just willpower at play there.
Oh, definitely not just willpower. We'll uncover the science behind why bad habits are so darn hard to break and what a major in Iraq and an ad man selling Febreze have in common.
Intriguing.
It's all about cues and rewards, my friend.
Duhigg lays out this thing called the habit loop. It's basically a three-part cycle: cue, routine, reward. Like a subconscious program running in the background of our brains.
So not about willpower, then?
Not just willpower, no. It's more complex than that. Take Lisa, for example. Yeah, the woman who quit smoking and, well, did all that other stuff, her journey actually started on a desert trek.
A desert trek. Sounds rough.
Right, Cairo. She was out there in the desert and realized she needed to quit smoking just to survive the physical challenge.
Quitting during a desert trek? That's hard mode.
Talk about commitment. But get this, quitting smoking became her keystone habit.
Keystone habit? What's that?
It means this one change had a ripple effect. So she quits smoking and starts jogging. Then that leads to healthier eating, then better financial habits, and eventually she goes back to school and gets engaged.
Wow. A complete life transformation.
All because of one habit change. And as her habits change, her brain actually rewired itself.
That's amazing. So our brains are always learning and adapting based on our habits.
Exactly. Always. But here's the thing. Duhigg makes this point that those old habits, they're still encoded in our brains, just lurking, waiting for the right triggers.
Like, how does that work?
Well, he uses the example of fast food. Imagine you're driving home after a long day, tired. That's your cue.
Okay. I'm tired, I'm driving.
You pass that fast food place, and bam, your routine kicks in, grab a quick meal. And the reward. Instant gratification, right?
It's like you're on autopilot.
Yeah.
Even if you know it's not the healthiest choice.
Exactly. Those cues and rewards are powerful. But here's the good news.
There's good news.
Once you understand that habit loop, you can start to interrupt those negative cycles and build new ones.
So you're like taking back control.
You got it. Duhigg has some really interesting examples of how this works on a bigger scale, too. Like, did you hear about the army major in Iraq who actually prevented riots using these principles?
Wait, an army major?
Right.
Preventing riots with habits. How's that possible?
He understood the power of routine, noticed crowds getting rowdy in plazas with food vendors.
So the food was the cue.
Yep. Removing the food vendors actually helped de-escalate things.
That's wild. So, like, understanding the habit loop can influence behavior in large groups, too. Makes me think about advertising.
Oh, definitely. They use similar tactics all the time.
I bet. Don't they play on our habits to, make us buy stuff?
Duhigg talks about Claude Hopkins, an ad man who made Pepsodent toothpaste a huge success by using the habit loop.
Okay, but how do you make toothpaste a habit? People already need to brush, right?
True, but Hopkins was smart. He needed to create a craving, so he focused on the feeling of film on your teeth, made it a problem that Pepsodent could solve.
So the film is the cue.
Exactly. Brushing with Pepsodent, that's the routine.
Okay, but what about the reward? Clean teeth are nice, but is that really craving-worthy?
That's where Hopkins got clever. He added ingredients to the toothpaste that created a tingling sensation. People started associating that tingle with clean teeth, and bam! They craved Pepsodent.
He turned a basic need into a desire. That's brilliant.
It is. Within 10 years, Pepsodent went from, nothing to one of the best-selling toothpastes in the world.
It's kind of scary how powerful this stuff is.
It's a double-edged sword, that's for sure. We can use this knowledge for good or for well.
Not so good. It really makes you think, Like how much of what we do every day is really a choice.
Yeah, it's almost like we're on autopilot sometimes.
Totally. And Duhigg takes this idea even further. He looks at how habits work, not just in us as individuals, but within society.
Oh, interesting.
He uses the Montgomery bus boycott as an example.
Oh, wow. That's a huge moment in history.
I know, right? Such a powerful example of activism and courage.
Definitely. But Duhigg argues that its success, wasn't just about those things.
What do you mean?
He says it was also about tapping into existing social habits within the Black community.
Social habits. Like what?
Well, think about the strong bonds people had, the sense of obligation, to their community. It started with Rosa Parks' close friends. They were outraged, obviously, when she was arrested and immediately rallied to support her.
And that outrage kind of spread.
Yeah, through their networks,
Yeah.
people who knew and respected Parks felt like they had to join the boycott, and then their friends and families felt obligated to. It became a social norm, almost like a collective habit.
So it was about more than just fighting for equality. It was about, like, activating those social bonds, making it a shared experience.
You got it. And Duhigg brings up these things called weak ties, like acquaintances, people in your broader social circle.
Weak ties.
Yeah. A sociologist named Mark Granovetter, he found that weak ties are actually more effective than strong ties when it comes to spreading information.
Really? That's surprising. You'd think your close friends would have more influence.
Well, think about it. Close friends usually share similar views, you know? Weak ties expose you to new ideas, connect you to a wider range of people. How'd you first hear about this podcast?
Good point. Actually, it was from an old colleague I hadn't talked to in years. So you're saying those weak ties helped spread the word about the boycott, brought more people into the movement.
Exactly. And those weak ties can create social pressure. If everyone you know is doing something, it's harder to opt out, right?
Like when everyone's going to that new restaurant and you don't want to be the only one who hasn't tried it. But that kind of pressure can be, manipulative too, especially by companies.
Oh, for sure. Duhigg talks about how companies exploit social habits for profit. Like, have you heard of sticky songs?
Sticky songs.
They're designed to get stuck in your head. Music companies use data and algorithms to figure out what makes a song catchy and then, amplify those elements to hook listeners.
Wow. So they're basically hacking our brains, making us crave certain sounds and melodies.
They're tapping into our subconscious desires and creating a sense of craving. It's almost like an addiction.
Okay, that's kind of creepy. Makes you wonder how much control we really have.
It's definitely something to be aware of. But Duhigg offers some strategies for using social habits to our advantage, too. Like, he talks about Alcoholics Anonymous and how their success is all about creating a culture of support and accountability.
So it's not just about individual willpower. It's about having a community that, reinforces good behaviors.
Right. AA gives people a sense of purpose and support, helps them stay on track. It's like having a whole team of cheerleaders.
Makes sense. If you're trying to eat healthier, being around people who are also into healthy eating makes it way easier.
Exactly. And this applies to workplaces, too. Duhigg gives this example of Paul O'Neill, who focused on worker safety at Alcoa.
Alcoa.
Yeah, the aluminum company. By making safety a core value, like a shared habit, he totally transformed the company's culture. They saw huge improvements.
It's like those small changes can create a ripple effect.
Absolutely. But it's not just about, orders from the top. Duhigg says it's also about empowering people to take ownership of habit change.
So like recognizing those small wins, little moments of success that build momentum.
Yes. It's about celebrating those small victories, too. It creates a culture where progress is acknowledged and rewarded.
And that reinforces those positive behaviors, right?
Sure.
It sounds like belief plays a big role in all this. Belief in ourselves, belief in our teams.
Belief is powerful. But as we go deeper into this world of habits, Duhigg brings up a pretty unsettling concept: sleepwalking.
Uh-oh, that sounds kind of scary.
He uses this case of Brian Thomas. He was a man who killed his wife while sleepwalking.
Oh my gosh.
It's a tragic example of how habits can operate outside of our awareness.
So, are you saying we're not always in control of our actions?
It's complicated. Duhigg explains that Thomas had a history of sleepwalking and sleep terrors. That fight-or-flight response even when there's no danger.
So he was reacting as if he was in danger, even though it was his wife next to him.
That's what it seems like. He had no memory of it. The court actually found him not guilty by reason of insanity.
Wow. That's a huge case. It really makes you think about consciousness and responsibility.
It does. Duhigg uses it to illustrate the power of habits operating outside of our awareness.
But if our habits can make us do things we never consciously do, does that mean we're all potential sleepwalkers?
It's a disturbing thought, but it highlights the importance of understanding our habits, especially those that might be harmful. Think about your own actions, like scrolling on your phone before bed or reaching for that bag of chips when you're stressed.
Yeah. Maybe not as dramatic as sleepwalking murder, but those are still habits, and they can still have a negative impact.
Exactly. Cultivating self-awareness is so crucial. Pay attention to your triggers, maybe keep a journal, talk to people you trust for feedback, be compassionate with yourself. We all have habits we're not proud of.
So how do we take control of these sleepwalking tendencies?
Duhigg talks about social movements like the civil rights movement or the movement for LGBTQ equality.
Okay.
These movements were successful because they tapped into social norms and created a shared purpose that changed beliefs and behaviors.
So even though we're not all leading these big movements, we can still apply those principles, right?
Exactly. Find communities that support your goals. Surround yourself with people who share your values. Advocate for change. It's about recognizing that our habits aren't just personal choices, they're influenced by, like, our social circles.
So if we work together, we can create a world where healthy habits are the norm.
Exactly.
It's a little overwhelming, right? Like changing these deep-seated habits. Is it even possible?
Oh, it's possible, but it's not always easy. Duhigg talks about this guy, William James. Brilliant psychologist and philosopher.
Okay.
But he struggled too. Early in his life, I mean. Depression, lack of direction.
So even someone like William James felt stuck.
Totally. He felt like a slave to his routines. But here's the interesting part. He didn't have some big epiphany, didn't just rely on willpower. He focused on small, daily changes.
Small changes. Like what?
Exercise, getting enough sleep, scheduling time for reflection, building habits that supported his well-being. And guess what?
What?
He started to believe in his own ability to change.
So that belief, that sense of agency, it was like the key.
Exactly. And his story, it's not unique. It shows us something really important. We're creatures of habit, yes, but we can also transform.
We're not just stuck.
Right. And Duhigg emphasizes that change doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, it's about those small wins, right?
Those tiny steps forward, they build momentum.
They're like fuel for our belief system.
Think of it like building a system of habits and routines that make positive change almost automatic. It's not about white-knuckling it with willpower all the time.
So how do we actually do that? How do we build this system? Where do we even start?
Well, first, we gotta get to know ourselves better. Self-awareness. We need to understand what triggers us, what rewards us. Duhigg suggests keeping a journal, track your habits, get feedback from people you trust.
So it's about creating a feedback loop. Check in, make adjustments.
Exactly. And then experiment. Try different things. Duhigg says mess with the cue, the routine, the reward. See what works for you.
Thinking back to Lisa and that trip to Cairo, or the army major preventing riots, even those sticky songs.
Right. Habits are powerful stuff.
But we're not helpless, right? We have the power to understand them and shape them to get what we want.
Exactly. That's the big takeaway. We're not just reacting, we're in control.
That's pretty awesome. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
It really has. But before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge. What's one small habit you can start building today?
Something that aligns with your goals, something that could spark a ripple effect.
And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress. Every step gets you closer to the best version of yourself.
You got this.
Thanks for joining us on this journey of self-discovery. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.